I'd like to welcome our guest speaker this morning. It's someone we all know, a member of the chorus primarily, but now giving us our guest sermon today. This is Brian Shoemaker, and looking forward to, because he borrowed one of my favorite books, which he'll be talking about today, so let that be a mystery.
Because of those who came before us, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of, and in spite of the horizons of their visions, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. And if you'll join me, please, with hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Gary mentioned, he loaned to me one of his favorite books, which is actually a very quick read because about 2/3 of it is graphic, but there's some very interesting stuff in here. So from the invention of Hugo Cabret, Hugo smiled and then Isabel wound up the mouse. They watched it skitter across the counter. Hugo thought about his father's description of the automaton. Did you ever notice that all machines are made for some purpose, for some reason, he asked Isabel? They're built to make you laugh, like little mouse here, or to tell the time, like clocks, or to fill you with wonder, like the automaton. Maybe that's why a broken machine always makes me a little sad, because it isn't able to do what it was meant to do. Isabel picked up the mouse, wound it again, and set it down. Maybe it's the same with people, Hugo continued. If you lose your purpose, it's like you're broken. Like Papa Georges? Maybe. Maybe we can fix him. How do we do that? I don't know, but maybe René Tabar can help us when he visits next week. He'll know what to do. Hugo and Isabel were quiet for a moment, and then Isabel said, "So is that your purpose, fixing things?" Hugo thought about it. I don't know, he said. Maybe. Then what's my purpose, wondered Isabel. I don't know, said Hugo. The two of them stared at the clock, and then they put away all the toys, including the little mouse, and closed the booth. They collected the money they had made, and Isabel put it in her pocket. Before you go home, come with me, Hugo said, and he helped Isabel through the nearest air vent into the walls. Between Hugo's injured hand and Isabel's sprained foot, it was extremely difficult for them to get up the staircases and the ladder, but they helped each other, and at last they came to the glass clocks that overlooked the city. The clocks were supposed to be lit from the inside, but the wiring had long ago stopped working. It's so beautiful, said Isabel. It looks like the whole city is made out of stars. Sometimes I come up here at night, even when I'm not fixing the clocks, just to look at the city. I like to imagine that the world is one big machine. You know, machines never have any extra parts. They have the exact number and types of parts they need. So I figure if the entire world is a big machine, I have to be there for some reason too. And in addition to that, a bit from the October 14th edition of Scientific American, October 2014, the first thing to acknowledge about diversity is that it can be difficult. In the US, where the dialogue of inclusion is relatively advanced, even the mention of the word diversity can lead to anxiety and conflict. Supreme Court justices disagree on the virtues of diversity and the means of achieving it. Corporations spend billions of dollars to attract and manage diversity both internally and externally, yet they still face discrimination lawsuits, and the leadership ranks of the business world remain predominantly white and male. It is reasonable to ask what good diversity does us. Diversity of expertise confers benefits that are obvious. You would not think of building a new car without engineers, designers, and quality control experts. But what about social diversity? What good comes from diversity of race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation? Research has shown that social diversity in a group can cause discomfort, rougher interactions, a lack of trust, greater perceived interpersonal conflict, lower communication, less cohesion, more concern about disrespect, and other problems. So what is the upside? The fact is that if you want to build teams or organizations capable of innovating, you need diversity. Diversity enhances creativity. It encourages the search for novel information and perspectives, leading to better decision-making and problem-solving. Diversity can improve the bottom line of companies and lead to unfettered discoveries and breakthrough innovations. Even simply being exposed to diversity can change the way you think. This is not just wishful thinking, it is the conclusion I draw from decades of research from organizational scientists, psychologists, sociologists, economists, and demographers. It's difficult to imagine living and working in a world where we aren't surrounded by machines. Mechanical, electrical, electronic, computerized, or some combination. Automobiles or trains take us to work and back. Clocks show us the time and wake us up in the morning. We converse with others over long distances through compact machines that pack all sorts of amazing technology into a portable box. The very act of writing often employs a ballpoint pen whose deceptively simple appearance hides an intriguing complexity. Some of us carry miniature devices which support our health, regulate our heartbeats, help us hear, measure our blood sugar, or deaden chronic pain. And, of course, manufacturing machines produce nearly all the objects we use in daily life: the clothing and shoes we wear, the books we read, the utensils we use for cooking and eating, the glass in our windows. Hugo Cabret's musing from the clock tower above the Paris train station got me to pondering the whole sweep of man-machine interaction. That passage, insightful by itself, suggested a range of viewpoints. 3 of them stand out for me: struggle against the machine, tyranny forcing us to become the machine, and the lesson we can draw from machines we've created. First, the struggle. In a 1966 song, Manfred Mann whined, "Machines, machines, they keep right on going. Machines, machines, they keep right on going. But I'm weak, well, I want to go on home. Too tired to speak, but they won't leave me alone. Oh, yeah." I'll skip the rest of the song. We get the idea. Mention machines and we think of automation. And who hasn't heard or read of someone losing a job because his or her employer introduced automation? This part of the struggle isn't new. In the early 19th century, textile artisans, calling themselves Luddites, rebelled against the mechanical inventions, stocking frames, spinning frames, and power looms that threatened to replace them with low-wage, less skilled laborers. The struggle extends well beyond the loss of livelihood. Science fiction writers repeatedly warn that the machines we create may someday rebel against us and take over. Already in 1920, Czech writer Karel Čapek popularized the term robot in his play R.U.R., though ironically his vision was of inexpensive, mass-produced biological worker beings who would eventually rise up against their human creator masters. Last November, I just discovered last night, The New York Times published an article titled Artificial Intelligence as a Threat, in which they cited fears of such notables as SpaceX entrepreneur Elon Musk and noted physicist Stephen Hawking over the future of artificial intelligence. Hawking is quoted as saying that AI, quote, would be the biggest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might also be the last, end quote. Machines which can make decisions like humans, they point out, do not have morality. And when systems we build are eventually as intelligent as humans, they could build even more intelligent systems. The AI, could build even more intelligent systems or super intelligent. If humans dominate Earth because we're the most intelligent creatures, what is the human role once something else is more intelligent? Science fiction, at least we hope it's that, explores what could happen when the machines we humans have created escape our control. Recall 2001: A Space Odyssey. HAL 9000, the mission computer, decides that the humans are a threat to their mission and kills one while on a spacewalk. A sci-fi short story collection I'm currently reading, called Man vs. Machine, explores a number of scenarios which could play out. In one story, destroyer devices meant to clear planets for human occupation now attack human colonies. In another, the ragged remains of humankind have barely survived a war against the sentient entity which developed from all the world's network-connected systems and devices, and so on. Could machines threaten to take over the world? On that bleak note, I'll move to the next concern: humans forced to be part of the machine. It's hilarious to watch Charlie Chaplin in the opening sections of Modern Times valiantly tightening bolts as work pieces rush by him ever faster on the production line, and watch him continue to tighten imaginary bolts even when he steps away from the line. Without the little tramp's zany antics, that scene has been our image, perhaps caricature is a better term, of production work in the industrial age. Unless you were gifted or lucky enough to rise to the level of engineer or manager, your lot was to become part of the big machine, doing some extremely repetitive task hours on end, day after day. We trace much of this tyranny to Frederick Winslow Taylor, who at the end of the 19th century spearheaded the drive to increase production efficiency by what he called scientific management, based on 4 principles. 1, replace rule-of-thumb work methods with methods based on scientific study of the tasks. 2, scientifically select, train, and develop each employee rather than passively leaving them to train themselves. 3, provide, quote, detailed instruction and supervision of each worker in the performance of that worker's discrete task. And 4, divide work nearly equally between managers and workers, so that the managers apply scientific management principles to planning the work, and the workers actually perform the tasks. Through so-called time and motion studies, how a worker is to accomplish a task is precisely planned and rigorously trained. In Taylor's words, and I quote here, "It is only through enforced standardization of methods, enforced adoption of the best implements and working conditions, and enforced cooperation that this faster work can be assured. And the duty of enforcing the adoption of standards and enforcing this cooperation rests with management alone." In other words, efficient production dictates that the human become the machine. The number of steps to take, the hand used to hold the wrench, the angle to hold the shovel, all carefully planned and slavishly followed. It doesn't take much to see where this so-called scientific method takes us, a world where individuals are completely devalued and considered simply interchangeable parts. Need I ask whether that's a world any of us would want to live in? There is, however, a bright spot in the man-machine story. If we think more metaphorically about machines, as little Hugo Cabret suggested to Isabel when looking out over Paris, there's a wealth of very human insight to gain. Very few pieces of a functioning system are truly identical. Every part, no matter how small or large, is essential for the whole to function. Only by interacting, springs to gears to levers, does the whole accomplish its goal. And consider the bimetal switch. It's the differences between the components, in this case, the different thermal expansion properties, that make the thing work. Now, I'm originally a scientist, so surprise, surprise, I find the best news in reports from the sciences. In the October 2014 issue, the editors of Scientific American published a series of articles under the common heading, The Inclusion Equation. One author after another presents findings which demonstrate how teams which are socially, culturally, racially diverse consistently outperform more homogeneous teams. More innovation, higher quality scientific research, greater information exchange, more creative ideas for improving communities. As a scientist, I always ask why when I see surprising new information. Catherine Phillips, whom I quoted in the reading, suggests reasons from her research. Members of a homogeneous group rest somewhat assured that they will agree with one another, that they will understand one another's perspectives and beliefs, that they will be able to easily come to consensus. But when members of a group notice that they are socially different from one another, they change their expectations. They anticipate differences of opinion and perspective. They assume they will need to work harder to come to a consensus. This logic helps to explain both the upside and the downside of social diversity. People work harder in diverse environments, both cognitively and socially. They might not like it, but the hard work can lead to better outcomes. It isn't just teams of designers and engineers, that was the end of the quote. It isn't just teams of designers and engineers that benefit from social diversity. In his contribution, Stephen Bishop writes about so-called citizen science, where members of the non-scientist public contribute in meaningful ways to classifying galaxies, to documenting environmental hazards, to counting North American birds, or to tabulating animals killed by motor vehicles. The very subjects studied and the types of questions asked also become broader when researchers use their personal experience to shape their investigation. Author D.N. Lee describes a series of examples. Carl Hart, associate professor of psychology and psychiatry at Columbia University, who grew up in inner-city Miami and briefly both tried and sold drugs, but later studied physiological effects of drugs on the human brain because he wanted to understand how drugs affect people. Margaret Hiza Redsteer, a research scientist at the U.S. Geological Survey who studies climate change impact on the Navajo Nation's land and water because of her own experience on the reservation with limited and often contaminated water supplies. Kellen A. Marshall Gillespie, a Chicago native and a doctoral student in urban ecology at the University of Illinois at Chicago, whose research stems from observing how pollution from cars and businesses affected the respiratory health of her inner-city neighbors. Merely bringing diverse individuals together is not the answer, though, according to author Victoria Plout. Citing multiple studies by differing methods, she shows how so-called colorblind policies fail to achieve benefits and even backfire. Pretending the differences don't exist is usually a sham and lets inherent biases leak out in subtle and unexpected ways. In these environments, team members from underrepresented populations, fill in the blank, female, black, Native American, Hispanic, often feel sidelined or discouraged and leave the organization. Instead, where teams adopt a strategy of recognizing and embracing the differences among their members, constructively and supportively, otherwise underrepresented members more often remain and contribute. Indeed, this finding may well point the way to achieving the goals of liberation theology that Buffy recently spoke about. In Professor Plout's words, embracing differences in a way that does not stereotype or pigeonhole people appears to hold promise for achieving diversity and, I would add, universal justice. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson we can take from the metaphor of the human mechanism. The machines all around us don't have to be a threat. They've allowed us to devote our energy to tasks that benefit from human creativity. That creativity has always been our differentiator and will remain so for a long time to come. The nature of work, even in production environments, has moved away from Taylor's vision of mindless programmed drudges. Modern, high-quality, lean manufacturing encourages all workers to contribute ideas for better methods and permit anyone to stop the production line if he or she sees a quality problem. And recognizing, like Hugo, that all of us are vital but diverse pieces of a great human machine can foster the kind of inclusive atmosphere we need to improve conditions for everyone. Can you find your purpose in this mechanism? And now, will you join me in singing hymn number 138, These Things Shall Be? The coffee was hot, and as Hugo let it cool, he looked around the cavernous station at all the people rushing by with 1,000 different places to go. When he saw them from above, he always thought the travelers looked like cogs in an intricate, swirling machine. But up close, amid the bustle and stampede, everything just seemed noisy and disconnected. For scientific and non-scientific organizations alike to get results, a deeper understanding of how diversity operates is required. No matter how sincere the goal setting, merely caring about diversity is not enough. Although there is no simple or perfect recipe to translate these sentiments into action and results, organizations are more likely to attract and retain diverse talent when they are smart and persistent in their outreach, nourish a sense of belonging, and put in place people who are accountable for and monitor diversity.